The day I left my hometown, I had nothing but 200,000 dong in my pocket. And a few old clothes. No money. No diploma. No one believed I could make it in the city. On nights when I slept under the eaves of strangers' shops, the rumble of my empty stomach was louder than the rain. I asked myself, why am I even here? What's the point of my existence? But from the very depths of that despair, a spark began to glow. Quiet, unyielding, and fiercer than every judgment cast upon me. The day he stepped off the village fields, his plastic sandals were worn down at the heels, and there was only 200,000 dong left in his pocket. He came from poor soil, from a home where his parents spent their lives bent over in the blazing sun and hardened earth, yet still struggled to put food on the table. As the eldest son, he once dreamed of going to college to change his life. But his exam results fell short of the passing mark. A high school diploma opened no doors, except the ones that led to low-paid, back-breaking labor. When his friends put on their caps and gowns and posed with bright smiles for their graduation photos, he was bent under the weight of cement sacks, sweat mixing with dust. Each time he went back home, the eyes of the neighbors held pity tinged with scorn. If you don't study, you'll spend your life working for others. Those words felt like stones tied to his heart, pulling him further down. He tried looking for work in town, but with an empty resume, the answer was always the same. We need someone with a degree. With no steady job, he drifted from one gig to another. Construction helper, waiter, street vendor's assistant. The meager pay barely covered rent. Meals were often nothing more than a dry baguette or a packet of instant noodles. At night, curled up on a creaky bed in a damp, dim rental room, he stared at the cracked ceiling and thought about the future. A future so hazy it left no space for dreams. His greatest fear wasn't poverty. It was being trapped forever at the bottom of society, unable to climb up. But deep inside, beneath the hardship and the shame, a faint spark remained. He didn't yet know what he would do, but he knew one thing for certain. If he stayed still, he'd be swallowed whole. And it was this very loss that would force him to take the first step, even if that step trembled. He left the small town and stepped into the city, with nothing to his name. Just a few worn-out clothes, a pair of shoes with frayed soles, and a vague sense of determination. The city was crowded and loud, but to him, it was a ruthless battlefield. He took any job that would pay. Hauling goods at the wholesale market at 2 a.m., delivering ice under the scorching midday sun, waiting tables at restaurants until late at night. At first, his days revolved around nothing more than making enough for food and rent. But then, while delivering goods to a small convenience store, he began noticing how the owner arranged products and spoke to customers. At a coffee shop job, he quietly watched the baristas work and memorized every movement. Every job he passed through wasn't just an income. It was a hidden lesson. At night, when his roommate was asleep, he'd borrow an old phone to go online and read free PDF books, watch skill tutorials. He studied sales, personal finance, and even small business success stories. He didn't understand everything right away, but he kept writing notes in a worn, dog-eared notebook. Not every road was lined with roses. The first time he saved up enough to open a sugarcane juice stall, months of rain left the business in debt. Spoiled stock, broken machines. Another time, he pooled money with an acquaintance to sell used electronics, only to have them run off with all the capital. Each failure left a scar, not just in his wallet, but in his trust. Still, every time he fell, he found a way to get back up. He began to realize that blindly chasing every opportunity wouldn't get him far. He needed to choose a direction, commit to it, and build experience piece by piece. And all those stumbles, painful as they were, became the most valuable baggage he could carry into the steps ahead. The biggest turning point came on a gray, rainy afternoon. After months of saving, he poured every last dong he had into stocking new inventory for a small shop he'd just managed to rent. But only a week later, his main client abruptly canceled a large order and still owed him money. The storage room was packed to the brim, his capital trapped inside unsold goods. Day after day passed with no customers in sight. Rent, meals, debt repayment. They all tightened around his neck like an invisible rope. That night, in his damp, musty room under a dim yellow bulb, he flipped through his worn notebook, pages filled with scattered lessons. And he realized, all this time, he'd only been imitating others, chasing quick wins without truly understanding the market, or knowing where his own strengths lay. He'd thrown himself into everything like a moth to a flame, but without a solid foundation to hold on to. The shock hit like a slap to the face. He understood then. Having no money and no degree didn't mean he couldn't succeed. But without real knowledge and a clear strategy, no matter how hard he worked, he'd be stuck circling the same failures. So he began to change. He let go of short-term ventures and chose a field where he could learn and work long-term. At first, it was small-scale online sales, enough to earn an income while training himself in marketing and customer service. Each evening, he spent hours on free courses, meticulously noting down every business principle, analyzing customer behavior. Most importantly, he learned patience. No more chasing the big score. Instead, he focused on building a foundation. Slowly, steadily, unshakably. From that point on, he knew he would no longer be a man blindly searching for a path, but someone who would draw his own map. By his 5th year in the city, his online business had grown steady enough to expand. From just a few small orders each week, he now had his own warehouse, a delivery team, and a steadily growing base of loyal customers. More importantly, he had built up capital, experience, and a network of trusted partners. Things he never could have imagined when he first started. One morning, standing in front of the newly rented warehouse, he suddenly thought of the muddy village road he'd walked away from and worn down sandals. The thought of returning home had never felt so clear. Not just to visit family, but to bring back what he'd learned and achieved. To build something for the place that raised him. He decided to open a small branch in his hometown, leveraging his existing supply network and the local market's needs. At first, many were skeptical. What kind of business can really work out here? But order by order, as neighbors received quality products at fair prices, their looks toward him began to change. From doubt to respect. It wasn't just about business. He made it a point to hire and train local young people, especially those who, like him in the past, had dropped out of school or were unemployed. He taught them how to manage orders, serve customers, and keep learning even outside a classroom. Each time he passed the old fields and saw his parents no longer bending their backs to exhaustion, he felt the true worth of his journey. Coming home, he didn't just bring money. He brought a belief that a low starting point doesn't decide your future. If you know how to create your own chances and hold on to them to the very end. The business back home was running steadily, but he never allowed himself to rest on his laurels. He knew the market changed every single day, and if he stood still, everything he'd built could disappear even faster than he'd earned it. So, alongside managing operations in his hometown, he made regular trips back to the city to study new trends, meet with partners, and learn from other business models. Each morning, he began his day by reading market news and jotting down fresh ideas. At night, once the store was closed, he read books, joined online classes, and honed his skills in management and marketing. He understood that his greatest capital was an endless willingness to learn. Though his income had improved, he kept a simple lifestyle. No luxury cars, no lavish houses. He chose to reinvest his profits into expanding his business and creating more jobs for young people in his hometown. He believed success wasn't just for personal gain. It was a tool to lift up others who were once in the position he had been. From time to time, local high schools and youth centers invited him to share his entrepreneurial journey. Standing before the crowd, he spoke openly about the nights he slept under eaves, the meals of instant noodles, the times he was left with nothing after a failure. He didn't paint success as a rose-covered path. Instead, he emphasized willpower, persistence, and the power of self-learning. For him, the journey was far from over. To keep living meant to keep moving forward, to keep taking on new challenges, and to keep spreading the belief that anyone, even without money or a degree, can build their own future, as long as they never give up. One late afternoon at year's end, just after closing the warehouse, he stood under the eaves and watched the sunset cast a golden glow over the village fields. The dirt road he'd once walked away from was now paved in smooth asphalt, and his steps upon it no longer trembled the way they had in the beginning. He understood now that the losses, the hungry nights, the times he'd been left with nothing, all of it was part of the journey that had brought him to this moment. His success wasn't measured by the numbers in his bank account, but by the fact that he had proven to himself, even without money or a degree, you can stand tall if you keep learning, stay persistent, and refuse to give up. He wanted to tell anyone struggling through life, don't be afraid to start from zero, because sometimes that empty space is the most fertile ground for planting your dreams. The important thing is to take one more step each day, no matter how small, and never stop moving. Because as long as you keep walking forward, no beginning is ever meaningless.